Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't. Oh,
Okay,
there you are.
we did it. Two old people trying to figure out the interwebs.
Hey, wait a second. Don't call me old.
Here we are. Hi.
Great. Okay, I'm going to give you a small intro. None of it's probably true, but anyway, best known for her roles in Everybody Loves Raymond, The Middle, and more recently, Carol's second act. Patricia is also known as a best-selling author, producer, philanthropist, wife, and mother. In 2001, she co-founded Four Boys Entertainment, a production company that she runs with her husband, David Hunt. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She's a founding member of World Vision Celebrity Ambassador Network. And then, Patty, I found this interesting. In 2011, you were ranked as number 24 on TV Guide's network special Funniest Women on TV. Why were you only 24? I mean,
I have no idea. I thought I would be at least 3.
couldn't you have been more funny?
I know.
Well, listen, I'm glad you joined today. As you may know, I've been interviewing people from all walks of life, from Medal of Honor recipients to Frank Luntz, the pollster, to a doctor talking about COVID, all kinds of stuff. And I'm thrilled that you take the time to chat today. Okay, you and I have a connection that you probably don't know about. I grew up in Northeast Ohio.
Where?
Canton.
Oh, Canton. That's where the Football Hall of Fame is, and my dad is in that.
No way.
Yeah.
No, I know that your dad was a sports writer.
Yeah.
Was it for the Plain Dealer?
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was voted the top football writer, I think in 1980. I want to say it was 80, could have been 81. So we were all there for his induction. Yeah. I mean, it's just a, small plaque on a wall, but it's very cool.
But you know what? At least he was the top. You were still only 24.
Yes, that's right.
You underachieved.
It's a shadow I can't get out from under, sadly.
But you know what? Someone wrote this into me, knowing that we were going to chat today. And he says, my hometown of Bay Village, Ohio, has more notoriety than fame since the Sam Shepard murder case happened there the year I graduated from high school.
Yes.
However, Patricia Heaton is one of the bright spots. She grew up in Bay. I was almost out of college by the time she was born, so we never overlapped. In fact, I didn't even know of her until she acquired fame on Everybody Loves Raymond. Memorable to me were the off-screen moments of integrity, especially back in 2003, where he writes, Everybody Loves Raymond star Patricia Heaton took a stand Monday night at the 30th Annual American Music Awards. The Bay Village native stood up and walked out of the Shrine Auditorium, disgusted by what she described as a, quote, an onslaught of lewd jokes and off-color remarks, end quote. You have a fan in Tom from Bay Village.
Yeah.
2003, were you presenting there at the awards that night?
I was supposed to. There was a young girl sitting in the front row, and they just started making weird jokes about it. And it just didn't sit right with me. I felt embarrassed to be a part of that. And I was especially disappointed because I love music so much and was so excited that I was going to be a part of it. And then I just felt like I couldn't go on. So I left before I was supposed to present. And I just told them I wasn't feeling comfortable. And I had a really pretty dress on that night too. It's like, darn it. But it just felt
that's what's important, is just to look good, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm, some huge moral warrior, but I did want to be seen in that dress. But, listen, I was raised very Catholic, and, you have to listen to your gut sometimes. And I just felt weirded out by the whole thing. And here's the thing, I understand presenting and you get, carried away in the moment. You're trying to keep an audience interested, and things come into your head and you're saying them. And so I don't think that there was an intention to be offensive. This was before Me Too. So more things were accepted, and certain, questionable stuff was not questionable then necessarily to audiences or networks, but I just had a sensitivity toward it, especially because it was directed at a younger person, a young woman. And so I just felt that I didn't want to be associated with that. So,
well, I want to go back. I want to go back to Ohio, and I want to go back to music because evidently tell us about your family and your upbringing.
mm-hmm.
You lost your mom when you were 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm from a very Catholic family. My mom was one of 15 children, and her parents went to Rome and got a medal from the Pope. My grandmother was Catholic Mother of the Year for the United States. And
okay, see, she was Mother of the Year. Your dad was the best, and you're still 24.
Yes, exactly. And my mother went to Mass every day. In the Catholic Church, we call that a daily communicant. My oldest sister is a nun. She's in the Dominican Order in Nashville. And, we just were very observant Catholics. And so that was really a major part of my life. And and then my mom died of or aneurysm of the carotid artery when I was 12. And obviously that has a huge impact on one's life. It was devastating. And at that time, this is in the 70s, so there wasn't a lot of therapy, grief counseling, anything like that in Cleveland in the 70s, in the suburbs, you kind of, and it was sort of that Irish Catholic thing of you just sort of offer it up and soldier on. It's like, your mom's dead. Have you finished your homework? I mean, not that bad, but once the big, because my dad was a sort of a well-known sports writer, there was a very big wake, a very big funeral, a lot of, commotion around it. But then there was, then it's sort of like just back to life. So there was no place to sort of explore the grief and put it somewhere and understand it. And, so that was pretty rough. On the other hand, this happens to a lot of people all over the world every day who don't even have the resources or a roof over their head. There's refugees all over the world who struggle with this. And I see that now, especially with my work in World Vision. But, if you're a Christian, you understand, as difficult as the experiences are, that everything has meaning and purpose, that God is in control. And C.S. Lewis has a phrase, a severe mercy. And so I feel like in some ways in my life, that event was a severe mercy, because it formed me spiritually in a way very early on, to confront our mortality and to realize that this world is fleeting. This isn't it. This is a path we are on to our true selves when we're reunited with our Creator. So I had to learn that very quickly. And it also sort of prepared me, I think, for a life in the entertainment industry, which is very unstable. So even if you have a show that goes for 9 years, it is going to end and you are going to be out of a job again. And there's a whole line of actresses behind you, at least 23 of them, who are trying to get ahead of you. And 23 successfully have, apparently.
So was there somebody there that filled that stead, the void of your mother being gone, or did you just kind of find your own way through that?
Yeah, you kind of find your own way through it. I mean, people are all good intentioned. But yeah, it wasn't really dealt with. And I actually did 2 years later when I was, well, maybe I was 16, so 4 years later, sort of went into a depression that you know, had to be taken to the Cleveland Clinic, and was experiencing depression and severe headaches and things like that. So, and I struggled with that on and off through my 20s, through college, and then through moving to New York. And I had a number of therapists that I saw, and I still, I think I still struggle with this sense of somewhat being on my own and having to rely on myself, which on the one hand, you know, makes you stronger, but you tend to allow yourself to be less vulnerable. So those are all things I work on, I think. Yeah. You know, as an actor, though, you know, this kind of thing is always there. And so it's as an actor, it's kind of a wonderful thing to tap into emotionally. And by the way, it's you know, it's right there. And I go along every day and don't think about it for days or weeks or months. But if the right line in a script is there, it just comes out. So it's an interesting way of being, and an interesting way of how we cope. You know, there's a author named M. Scott Peck who wrote it, one of the first very successful self-help books, called The Road Less Traveled. And the opening line in it is, "Life is difficult." And he's always been impressed by the way human beings adapt to suffering in their lives. Human beings are quite phenomenal in the ability to adapt. And that's been the case for me, I think, of, you know, having to move forward. And it's good to know that you're able to do that. And it's a good thing to teach your kids.
You went to college in Ohio. Was it Ohio Wesleyan or Ohio State? Where did you go?
The Ohio State University. Please do your research.
The Ohio State.
Yeah.
You studied drama. And then
I started as a journalism major and changed into drama middle of my junior year.
What in the world were you thinking when you went to New York?
Oh, well, I had been, you know, I left Ohio State and I worked for maybe 2 days in this sort of low rent mafia kind of restaurant. And I was like, this ain't it. And a friend of mine from high school, Kathy Thomas, called me and said, she was in Chicago, and she said, "Hey, you want to move to New York?" And I'm like, yes. And my brother was there already. And so I just knew that I couldn't stay in Ohio, that there was nothing for me there. I just, you know, I think there's these two types of personalities. I think the people that love being in their community and where they grew up, and people who are just aching for adventure. And I'm one of those adventurers. Doesn't mean I don't love my community in Cleveland, and I'm very grateful for my upbringing there, and grateful for the people of Ohio who are so lovely, you know, it's a wonderful Midwestern quality. But I really needed to go out and just have an adventure and really pursue acting and get it out of my system if I needed to, you know.
So you go to New York, you're in an off-Broadway production of Don't Get God Started?
Yeah, that's quite a few years after I got there, but yes.
Okay, then you started an acting company, which
with some friends from my acting class, yeah.
And that ended up bringing you to LA with the Johnstown Vindicator?
Johnstown Vindicator, yes, which was a play based on an Akron, Ohio newspaper, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I took that play. We got good reviews in New York, and from the New York Times and from other outlets. And so I had met my husband at that point, and he was going to LA to do a movie. So I came with him and with this play and with the blessings of the author and with money from a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer commercial. It's about the only other job I got while in the 9 years I was in New York. I think I did one Pabst commercial and an Anison commercial. And I used that money. It was about $5,000 in residuals that I saved. And I produced the play in Los Angeles. And I contacted a lot of casting directors to come and see it, which they did. And I had printed up all the reviews I had gotten and the good review in the New York Times. I printed that up and I sent it to the casting directors. And so I was able to start getting auditions in Los Angeles without an agent. I moved there without an agent, without a manager, without a car, and with one commercial on a reel.
You know, we think sometimes of our careers in spots or commercials or shows. Both of our kids are adopted. And what allowed us to adopt our son Matthew was a Delta Airlines commercial that I sang on. I made enough money that when it came time to pay for his adoption, it was Delta Airlines.
Wow, that's a cool story.
I look back to that. That was a seminal kind of a moment.
Yes.
To allow us to make that adoption happen. Here in LA, and I want to just for a second, I want to talk about a mutual friend of ours who also has done quite well in the industry, and it's our friend Gary Sinise.
Yes. The best, the absolute best, the best guy ever. Why he's not on the cover of every magazine for his philanthropy in aiding our wounded vets is a mystery to me, but someday.
Well, and I remember it was a couple of years ago, Gary reached out to you and to Tom Dreesen and myself. Yeah. And his dad had been rehabilitating in a place called Mary Health of the Sick, where these nuns were helping to care for other people, but also his dad. And Gary says to the nuns and the ladies organizing, saying, "Can I bring a couple of my buddies?" And I don't think they realized that Gary was taking over the banquet. And yes. it was such a neat night because you emceed, Tom Dreesen did like 20 minutes, Gary shared, and then I sang. And I think the nuns were like, you know, God showed up or something.
Well, it was funny because they were all under 5 feet tall and they were like from Portugal or something, right? Yes. and or Spain or something. And you know, I remember getting in the car and then looking at the sat nav to see, and I realized this place was like an hour and a half away. And I was like, Gary, what are you doing to me? And, you know, I kind of, you know, an interior grumble the whole time I'm driving, like on a Saturday night. And I'm thinking, I'm on a TV show. Am I driving out to this godforsaken place with a bunch of nuns and an old folks home? And, you know, very unchristian, uncharitable thoughts. And then, of course, I got there. And, you know, I actually said to my husband when I got back, I said, listen, we got to make a donation to this place to make sure if I need it, I can get in there and have those nuns take care of me. Because there's something otherworldly about these lovely women. You know, they were absolutely amazing. We had such a fun time that night. And it was such a hoot. And of course, that's almost the way it always is. You know, if you step out and you decide you're going to do something, it's like Satan comes along and starts, you know, standing on your shoulder going, you're better than this. You can, you know, you're too big. I mean, and of course it was such a great evening and it's such a great organization. So I was so glad we went and did that. But that's typical of Gary too. You know, he's such a lovely guy. He does so much for people and doesn't really get, you know, the attention he deserves. But of course, that's not why he's doing it. He's doing it because he loves people and he loves our military and wants to make sure they're taken care of. So, you know, it was a great evening.
Well, I know that this time is about you, but I do want to give a plug here. We both know that Gary has a son, Mac, who's going through some real tough days, has facing a real difficult cancer. Mm-hmm. And it's a cancer called Cordoma.
Yeah.
And if any of you out there want to know more about it, email me, or you can go to impact.cordomafoundation.org. Impact.cordomafoundation.org. You can see Mac's story. And Patty and I love Gary.
Yeah.
And
you know, here's the thing. You know, Gary is so modest of a person. He doesn't ever want to burden anybody. And so, you know, he hasn't been, it's not widely known that their family is going through the struggle, except among, you know, his friends. And he has not stopped doing all the wonderful work of the Gary Sinise Foundation. But he certainly, first and foremost, they really could use all your prayers of all the viewers right now And then donating to Impact.Cordoma Foundation would really go a long way, because it's a very rare spinal cancer, and it's very, very aggressive. So anything anybody can contribute to that organization is welcome.
So tell me, are you your bio says you're an actress and you're a comedian.
Mm.
Are you more of an actress or more of a comedian? Is there a difference?
Yes, there's definitely a difference. I would say, I don't know that I'm a comedian. I'm an actress who does comedy. Okay, I'm going to say something that, might be offensive to some actresses, but all actors can do drama, but not all actors can do comedy. And I'm not trying to puff myself up, but it's just a thing that you either have or you don't. And so, so in that sense, I mean, I do comedy. Comedians are a separate breed. So if Ray Romano is an actor and a comedian, and he does stand-up, and I don't do stand-up. My sons wish I would try my hand at stand-up, but that's a very particular art form, and so I think that we have to make that distinction. So I don't know that my bio should actually say I'm a comedian. I'm an actress that does comedy.
Okay. Tell us your best Everybody Loves Raymond story. Tell us something that was either very funny or very emotional, or tell us something that has stuck with you through these years.
Well, one season, it must have been could have been the first or the third, I was pregnant. And I remember, I don't know if it was during rehearsal or taping, either somebody made me laugh or I sneezed, but I wet my pants. Everything had to stop so I could go change. Poor Ray. But also on the series finale, the final episode, everybody's families who were in New York had flown in. Every network was there. A huge party was set up for afterwards. And like I did almost every season, I lost my voice. And we had to cancel everything the night of the final episode. In particular, because that episode had to do with Ray getting sick and kind of losing his voice. So if it had been about something else, we would have carried on. I would have soldiered on with a scratchy voice and maybe laid it in later. But because that was part of the storyline, we couldn't have me with any illness. And so I was weeping. I mean, everyone was there. And so we actually shot the finale the next week with nobody there except a small audience. No camera, camera crews. I mean, the party was done. We had a little party on the set with just cast and crew, kind of really pared down. And it was so lovely. And it's almost like we ended as we had begun, with nobody really, it was just us. And there was a sweetness to it in the end. But yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before.
Was there an emptiness, or was after the show completed? Was there a time of transition? What was life?
Oh yeah, every time that happens. I actually, right after we wrapped, I had to do jury duty. I was thinking okay, 9 years, we're done, I can relax. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but it's raising the kids and doing work is a lot. And I had to go to jury duty. And I was living in, Hollywood, and I had to drive to Santa Monica because I think some reason my business manager is registered there. So that's where they got me. And I had to drive out to Santa Monica every day. And it was about a bad, plastering job at some construction site. So it wasn't even a cool, criminal thing.
Yeah.
It was a civil lawsuit against a contractor where we had to look at Polaroids of drywall for 2 weeks. Not only that, I was mistaken for Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I said, "Oh, are you that actress from Seinfeld?" I mean, insult to injury. And I love her. She's amazing. She's very, very funny and hardworking. She's probably number 22 on that list.
I would think so, yeah.
You know, that was just brutal. It was like, I feel like sometimes God just has his cosmic way with me, just to make sure my ego doesn't get too big. But there's always this feeling of being unmoored once a show ends, because I'm much better in life when I have a schedule. I'm not great at self-disciplining and self-scheduling. I really have to work hard at it, because I'm very much, I mean, this pandemic, you know, allowed me to just be my natural self, which was sit on the couch all day long and watch TV. And so I love working and I love acting, but I also love the schedule that it gives me. And so that's hard for me to make that adjustment. After the middle ended, not only did my show end, but all my kids were out of the house. So I had this double whammy of, you know, my two big identities, being a mother and then being an actress, were gone. So that's, you know, that was interesting. And during that time, it was like 2 years ago or a little more, maybe 3 years ago, this is an interesting development. I found myself drinking more than I usually do. And I felt like that was gonna start being a problem. I just kind of could see that if this kept up, it wasn't gonna be pretty. So this past July has been 2 years since I've had a drink. And that's been a big change in my life, and a very good change, actually.
What gave you the understanding, the foresight?
Just, you know, I have, there's people in my life who drink a lot, and there's people in my life who are sober. And I just looked at that and I thought, I think I need to be in the sober camp. And a couple of things sort of pushed me towards it. I just realized I was drinking more. Yeah, that was just happening. Yeah. And I did some research, and I saw that women who have been moderate drinkers all their lives tend to start having drinking problems in their like 50s and 60s. And I think it's because of these life changes. You know, after menopause, your body doesn't process alcohol as well. You know, maybe you retire or your husband retires and your kids are out of the house. And as I said, the things that have sort of defined you and anchored you are not there anymore. And so instead of really dealing with those feelings, you kind of numb those things. And I feel like that I was doing that a little bit. Also, my sons are in their 20s, and they're, you know, nobody's in a serious relationship. I think it's probably going to be, you know, at a minimum 10 years before I have grandchildren. So I just want, you know, that would put me in my 70s. So I want to be fully alert and in full, you know, control, have all my neurons firing properly. So I really decided for my future. I think that would be the best idea, is to stop drinking. And then, but I had to really, I had to put it out there to God and say, look, here's the deal. I think I need to stop drinking. Mm-hmm. But I would never be able to do that. I adore bourbon. I adore it. So I was just like, you know, Lord, you're going to have to do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. And literally within 48 hours, I had made the decision to stop drinking. And it came about, I'll tell you this little story. I was visiting my sons, and we were together at a dinner at my one son's house, and we were cooking and having wine. Now, this is right after I said, okay, I need to stop, but you're going to have to do it. So immediately I went out that night or the next night, I can't remember, and I brought bottles of wine. So we're cooking and drinking, eating and drinking, cleaning up and drinking. and then playing a big board game at the table and drinking. But this is over the span of like 5 or 6 hours, right? I'm trying to make a joke. And I said, you know, in our family, it's a tradition. And I could not pronounce the word tradition. By the way, I felt completely alert and unaffected because I was just filling my glass here and there throughout these hours. I tried 3 times to pronounce the word tradition, couldn't do it. And I thought, what is the alcohol doing to my brain that's making me feel like I'm normal, but my neurons are like misfiring? Like it's doing something to me, whether I know it or not, whether I feel it or not. And right away, that was it. I happened to be having breakfast the next morning with a friend who's been sober for, 20 years or more. And I said to her, I'm telling you, you're the first person I'm telling. This is the day I stopped drinking. And she had just been with me a couple of days before where I was downing Prosecco at lunchtime. And she was like, what happened? I just saw you drinking at lunch. And I told her what happened. And, you know, she's like, oh, okay. And yeah, I haven't had a drink since. And I feel like it was just an almost immediate answer to prayer. And that doesn't happen to me that often. Not that God doesn't answer prayers, but having putting out a specific request and having it answered so immediately is unusual for me. So I feel like there's a reason God wants me to stop drinking, and there's some purpose to it, and it's helped me maintain the sobriety. And I'll tell you, Peter Boyle, who was Catholic also and sober for many years, you know, told me what he did when he was thinking about having a drink. Because we used to go out every Thursday night after a tape night, and your adrenaline's really high, and everybody goes out after you tape with the audience, and you go to a bar and just kind of relax and bring yourself down off that performance high, have a couple drinks. And I said to Peter, how do you not drink after a show? And he said, I just picture taking the first drink, and then I picture the second one and the third one, and I remember where it leads me. And then as soon as I do that, sort of the urge is done, and I don't have to drink, and I know I don't want to take that road. And that was, that's like 25 years ago. Wow. But I remembered it. And that has helped me sort of maintain the sobriety, is that advice he gave.
One of the people watching asked this question, Mark asked this question, do you have people in your life that help keep you accountable, not just yes people? This person also manages actors and so forth, and he just wonders, is there any kind of accountability that you put around yourself?
Your kids, I think your kids, they could care less if you're on a show. They need you to help them with a project at school they've forgotten, or they come to you at the last minute and say, I still have 8 hours of community service to do. Can you take me to something? I mean, and I sort of made it a point in our family to try to keep the show business aspect away from them as much as possible, because I don't think it's healthy for kids of famous parents to have the burden of their parents' fame and have that bar set for them. It's an unreachable, unattainable bar for most people. And so I feel like if you come into my house, you wouldn't know that anybody in the house is in show business. The Emmys are not displayed. There's no pictures of us on TV shows or at award shows or on talk. None of it. I have a tiny office in the back corner of the house, and all that stuff is on one shelf that nobody sees. So I have tried to keep that away from them and just be their mom. In fact, I did a very short-lived show with Kelsey Grammer called Back to You. And at the time, my kids were little, and our work schedule was such that I went in at 10 o'clock, and Kelsey didn't like to over-rehearse, so we would be done by 1:30 or so. And so I would take the kids to school, go into work, rehearse till 1:30, come home, get a couple things done, then go pick them up from school. So I never told them I was on a show. I just thought, you know what, let me just be mom, completely mom here. Until one day my son, Joe, came home and he said, Mom, are you on a show? Because there's a big billboard outside of school with your picture on it. And I like hung my head in shame. I was like, yes, I'm on a show. um, so, yeah, and I think the other thing is I got my start so late. You know, I didn't start making my living as an actor till I was 30s, in my early 30s. And prior to that, I was still sitting in a little apartment in West Hollywood summarizing depositions to make money. Even when I was on doing episodic, it still wasn't enough to pay my bills. So I still had to keep doing deposition work. So I just feel like I don't think I've ever taken it for granted. I mean, I've worked on the Warner Brothers lot for now 18 years, and I just can never believe I was there. Every day, you just want to, like the Pope, you just want to kiss the ground and just think, wow, this is way beyond what I ever imagined my life would be. So I still think I'm sort of thrilled about what's happened to me. So I don't take it for granted.
At one point, you said that you went through a self-described Protestant wilderness.
Yes.
What can you, I mean, you're being really vulnerable here talking about peeing and drinking, you know.
They kind of connected.
but can you share what?
Oh, yes. Well, so I had this really unfortunate, very unthought out early marriage for 3 years in New York. And it's at the time when my brother, you know, my sister had joined a cloister. This is before she was a Dominican. She was in a cloister, so I was never going to see her again. My brother had moved to San Francisco to write for the now defunct Examiner. And I, you know, had all these abandonment issues from my mother dying. So then I feel like more family members abandoning. So I just ended up just marrying this guy from my acting class, not a bad guy, after like 2 weeks of dating. It was like this kind of like, I need to hang on to something, right? And of course, because I'm Catholic, you know, even though it wasn't really the best, I would never get divorced because I'm Catholic. And we don't have that in my family. So it wasn't a good thing. Didn't want to be the first one. But he left. He did not want to stay in the marriage. And so, you know, we got divorced. I did not get it annulled though. And so I was under, I didn't realize till much later, I was under the mistaken thought that if you're divorced, you can't receive communion in the Catholic Church. But actually, it's only if you're divorced and remarried that you can't receive communion. So, but anyway, so during that time, I thought, well, for your viewers who are not Catholic, you know, the Eucharist, or communion, as you might know, is the focus of the Mass. And so if you know, if you can't receive the Eucharist, all you go there for is what's usually a bad sermon. And so I started going to all these Protestant churches where I could receive communion and hear some incredible preaching. So I've been introduced to some of the finest preachers in the world, and Tim Keller from Redeemer in New York. Alistair Begg, who's in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Lovely Scottish guy in Cleveland. God works in mysterious ways. You know, there's Ravi Zacharias just passed. He's wonderful. So there's all these. So, you know, I jokingly say Protestant wilderness, but the amount of knowledge and incredible preaching and teaching and, you know, books out there by all these people, they're really, really wonderful. So it was quite a gift, actually. And now, I mean, I sort of, before the pandemic shut everybody down, I would go to 7 a.m. Mass on Sunday and then go to a 9 a.m. service at like a Protestant or evangelical church to hear some teaching. Mm-hmm. So, and I still, again, before the pandemic, I try to get to communion like my mom did daily, if possible, at least 3 times a week. So, and if my work schedule allowed. So now I feel like I have the best of both worlds.
Hearing you say that, I go to Washington, D.C. twice a month, and mm-hmm. I engage with a lot of people on the Hill. And there was this.
Are you Catholic or no?
I'm not Catholic.
Oh, what are you?
I'm a mutt.
You're a mutt.
My dad was a United Methodist pastor.
Okay.
I went to a Southern Baptist seminary. I worked at a Baptist church.
Okay.
And then after that, we attended a congregational church in Pasadena.
Mm.
And after that, we went to Church on the Way in Van
Oh, yeah, Jack Hayford,
with
yeah.
Jack Hayford. And then most recently, we've been attending Bel Air Presbyterian Church.
Oh,
So
great.
we're you know,
Yeah, I've done that same thing.
but you know what? I want to be someplace where we're about Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was in an office there in DC a couple of years ago, stepped in, I was talking to Tracy, who had just been in the hospital for cancer. And she tells me she's there taking cancer treatments, and in walks the priest. And she goes, he looks really familiar. And it turns out that he had been her priest years ago, but she hadn't been going to Mass because she had gone through a divorce.
Right.
And she shares this with this priest. She realizes he was her priest, and he goes, oh, no, no, no. God would want you to come to Mass. God would want you. And so hearing that, I mean, when you said that, it made me think of Tracy there, who had the same kind of experience.
Well, you know, I ended up meeting this priest in Los Angeles, Paul Donlin, who's sort of this roving Opus Dei guy who looks for fallen away Catholics and kind of ropes them back in. And he's super knowledgeable. He was like a Gulf War chaplain. He speaks a number of languages. I think he might even be a lawyer. And, you know, he just knows his stuff, and he knows history, and he's super smart. And somebody introduced me to him, and he said, listen, we got to fix this annulment thing, and I'm going to take care of it for you. And this is what we're going to do, because you need to get back to the church. And I was happy to do that, you know, and you have to go through this process where you have to talk about why the divorce happened. And, you know, I'm talking to this Monsignor, and he said, do you mind, nowadays we record it, we tape record it, and then we have these nuns transcribe it. And I was like, those poor nuns. So every day they just write down all the misery of all these married people. I said, they're probably so glad they're nuns. And he said, well, you know, as one of the nuns said, I wasn't born a nun. I understand these things, you know. And we got that done. And then he said, like, I know a parish where not only we can get this annulment done quickly, but Dave can join the church, and he can get his first communion and confirmation. We can get all done at once. I'm like, oh, it's like a threefer, you know? So I said to another friend, you know, you can get really good deals in the church now if you're thinking of coming back. And I know the guy who can do it. So we had to, not only did I have to get the annulment, and I said, so Father, the annulment came through, and but I'm waiting for communion because I'd like you to give me communion. He said, well, you would have to wait anyway, because now we have to reconsecrate your marriage in the church. It's like, okay. So we did that, and then Dave, you know, got confirmed, and now we're all squared away.
You've referred to your faith several times today. It seems to be right out front there. And as I fly to DC, or as I fly any place, I mean, one of the reasons I go to DC is I pray with members of Congress. Mm-hmm. And I help lead a worship service there. But as I'm flying, and if someone's next to me and they say, what business are you in? Mm-hmm. Many times I'll say that I'm in communications. Because if I, out of the box, say, well, I'm a believer and I'm going to go to DC and pray and lead in the work, they shut down.
Right.
But then I let them kind of pull it out of me.
Yeah.
They say, what do you mean by communications? And then I'd let them know. But your faith is right there. You've lost work in Hollywood, do you think, because of your faith and your outspokenness? Or
I don't know. I mean, people say it, and I'm sure there are people who won't work with me. I'm sure there is. But I don't know them because I haven't worked with them, because they won't work with me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like,
it works for everybody.
Ignorance is bliss. I mean, I seem to have kept working. So,
well, yeah, you're only 24 though. So
that's right. So there's plenty of room, years to be snubbed ahead of me. You know, it is what it is. It obviously, it's Hollywood in some ways, it's weird because in some ways it's hostile to Christianity, I guess. And look, Christians have done a lot of damage to our faith, and look at what's recently happening with Jerry Falwell Jr. and this whole thing. That happens constantly. And, you know, not like it doesn't happen in other businesses, but when you are holding up a certain standard, then your fall is greater and there's greater damage because you're holding up a standard. Whereas in Hollywood, there isn't really a standard. A lot of stuff is like, do what you want, you know. So, and we saw the results of that with Me Too and Harvey Weinstein and all that. But somehow, you know, they never held up this standard of morality. So it's tough, but I don't know. You know, I have really tried, especially recently with all the divisiveness in the country, it's breaking my heart for our country. And, you know, as Christians, we are commanded to love our enemy. I don't think of people as enemies, but this is the way the scripture puts it. You know, love and pray for people who are against you. And that's not the world we're living in right now. And I think we have to have more of that. I mean, I think I just tweeted today something from 1 Peter that says, what is it? Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you the reason for the hope you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. So that's what's missing from our dialogue in the country today is gentleness and respect. And I never judge anybody by their political views, or I would not have a single friend, you know, I would have 3 friends in LA. But I just don't think politics, people can say anything they want, they can vote how they want. It's what they do in their daily lives and how they behave and how they treat people that I think really shows their character and who they are, not what their political opinions are. Because I think at the end of the day, both Democrats and Republicans want to make people's lives better. And we have different ways of how to do that. We disagree on how to make people's lives better. So that's you know, I just wish people could remember that. I was a Democrat all my life. You know, I'm Irish Catholic from Cleveland, and, you know, everybody in that group has basically historically been, you know, part of the Democrat Party. And, you know, it's just, things have changed a lot. And as a Catholic and being pro-life, you know, I just felt I could no longer participate in that. But I've not been happy with the Republican Party necessarily either. So I've taken a step back from all politics and just try to, you know, do what I can where I'm planted to make people's lives better. And there's a couple of local places in Los Angeles, the Dream Center, Claris Health to help in my local community. And then of course, World Vision, which is the largest provider of clean water in the world. Wonderful accountability, transparency, and effectiveness in every community that they work in. So that's where I've decided to put my energy, because I think if you put politics up on a pedestal, you're going to be so disappointed. You're going to crash, and you're not going to be a happy person. Life is very short, and I'm trying to be happy and contribute.
Okay. I read this attributed to you. Every 36 seconds, in America, a woman lays down her body, forced to choose abortion out of a lack of practical resources and emotional support. Abortion is a reflection that society has failed women.
Right.
It does seem that, and some would say that's being political, but in my mind, this is not political. This is biblical. This is we're dealing with supernatural here. Abortion is something you've been very outspoken on.
Yeah, well, that really comes from my Catholic upbringing, and you can take it from a completely secular view. Scientifically, life begins at conception, and this is a human life we're talking about. And it is a complicated issue, and there are women who are really struggling. And I think that the Catholic Church even has always allowed that if a woman is going to physically die from her pregnancy, then it's okay to have an abortion.
Mhm.
That's never been a question. People don't understand this. The fact is, it's very rare that, I won't say it's very rare, but at the point we're living in today with all of the technology that we have, we can see the humanity of the child now where we couldn't before. And also there's so many life-saving technologies for pregnant women now. And I think they've just found that most women, if they had the resources, would not choose abortion. So, I'd rather be the person who spends their time finding those resources for women, as opposed to being the person who says, sorry, I guess you're going to have to abort your child, your son or your daughter. So I don't want to be in that camp. I want to be in the camp that says we're going to do everything we can to get you what you need. So that's, I just feel like you just want to be on the side of life. You want to be on the side of life.
Okay, what gives you, we're kind of wrapping up here. What gives you hope?
Oh, somebody asked me that the other day, and it's really Jesus is my hope. During this pandemic, I've taken to walking around this reservoir near my house, and I just put my headphones on and I'll listen to a sermon by, say, Tim Keller, mostly all Tim Keller sermons. And it's been great to just be immersed in the Word of God and to be reminded on a daily basis that He is in control. These things are sent to expose who we are and where our trust is, and to see what kind of person we are. Are we helping out people during this crisis? Are we panicking during this crisis? Are we grateful? Are we thankful? Where is our heart at when challenging times come? And it's just made me, like so many people, very reflect on what's important, reflect on the importance of our faith, our family, our friends, and those are the things that last. And I think it's been a huge reset. And it's been great for me, even though my show was canceled, my deal at CBS was not renewed. It's been tricky. We lost a few other things because of the pandemic. So you just have to really think, like, what am I putting my faith in and what am I putting my trust in? And it's good to have that reset. For me, it's been good.
Okay. We didn't even talk about your new book. I don't have the real book because you were too cheap.
You got to buy it, baby. I'm only number 24 of Funniest Woman. I can't just give this stuff away.
Tell us real quick, just give us real quick, your second act. Tell us, people can buy it, I'm sure, at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and so forth.
Well, speaking of my canceled show, it was, a great idea of a woman who has a second act after her divorce, and she fulfills her lifelong dream of becoming a doctor. And right now, people are being forced to think about a second act because a lot of people have lost their job because of the pandemic. And this book is a collection of inspirational stories of people that I've talked to who, because of challenging circumstances, have had to rethink what their life is going to look like and where they're going to how they're going to make a living and how they're going to support their family or how they're going to save family members. And it's a wonderful book, especially for this time, because even if you haven't lost your job, you probably had 3 or 4 or 5 months to sit at home and think, is this what when we're allowed kind of fully to go out again, is that what I want to be doing? Now that I see how fragile and precious life is, do I want to go back to what I was doing before? Or is there some other purpose and meaning for my life for these precious days we've been given? And so this book is a real inspiration of people who've done all different kinds of things. A TV producer who started a video animation studio to help her autistic son. A comedian who started a company called Laughter on Call when her grandma or her mother had Alzheimer's. And so she had comedians go in and start talking to her grandmother or her mother and really got through to her. People who, a TV presenter who had rosacea and her her makeup could never cover and her skin problems. She had to create her own cosmetic company. A guy in prison, Dave Dahl, who got out and started Dave's Killer Bread, which you find in every single store in the country. So there's all these inspiring stories about the steps that people took, the challenges they encountered as they were trying to recreate their life and their livelihood. And I think right now is a great time for it to give people inspiration.
Great. Well, I hope folks will check it out. Your second act. Well, there it is. Your second act. And Patricia, you probably don't know this, but this is how I close each one of these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Heavenly Father, I pray for Patricia today. I pray for her family, for David, for Sam, for John, for Joseph, and for Dan. I pray that you would put angels around all of them, protecting angels, that you would surround each one of these boys with good people who will influence them in a positive way, that will encourage them. Pray for David, for Patty and the production company, for 4 boys, that you give them great wisdom and discernment on ideas, on concepts, on things that are pitched to them. Help them know where to put their activity and their time and their money. But I pray that, especially for Patricia right now, that you would bless her, that you would cover her with your blood and protect her. Help her to be number 23 and not settle for number 24. I pray pray a blessing on her today. I thank you for her and for her time. And I pray this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, this is so fun, Steve. It's so nice seeing you.
Oh, great to see you. You have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.